All right, I'd like to welcome everybody to the webinar this afternoon. Today we're going to be talking about editing route times in MapNet. First thing I'd like to discuss is in the activity settings at each of your schools. All right, in the MapNet program, you create activities at your schools and you create the routes using these activities. Now, in the settings for the activities, you have a times page, and the times page is broken down into two halves. The left half is for the arrival. The right half is for the departure. Typically, on a full-day activity, you would have a morning arrival and an afternoon departure. Now, the routes, when you create them using this activity, the routes will default as at the arrival time, the latest arrival time. All right, so when you calculate the route and create the route, the program will set the arrival time using what is the latest arrival time in the activity times page. In the delivery route, the system will use the earliest departure time as the default time for the departure time on the route. All right, so in ensuring that your route times are correct in MapNet, one of the first things you want to do is you want to look at the activities in your schools that you're using to create those routes and make sure that those latest arrival, and the earliest departure time are correct. All too often we run into situations where we have schools that change their bell times, and sometimes we are in a hurry, so we just change the bell times here at the top, and we forget that MapNet is actually using the latest arrival and earliest departure time for the route. So we need to make sure that those two times are correct. Okay, so what I wanted to talk about next then is the stop load times page. All right, so the times on the route are affected or changed by the stop load time. The stop load time is the amount of time it takes to load or unload the students at a given bus stop. The stop load time is based on the seat type assigned to the rider and the number of riders assigned to the stop. So in this table, you'll see a listing for each of my seat types, and the from load and to load are the number of riders. So for a stop that has 0 to 2 riders with a regular seat type, my program is going to add 0.3 of a minute to that stop time. So one of the things you want to make sure you do is if you add a new seat type to your system, you want to make certain that you also add the corresponding stop load time to this page for that seat type. Now, if you have stops with no students assigned, you can, at the bottom here, assign a default loading time to those zero load stops. Currently, I'm adding 0 minutes. In addition to the defaults in the stop load times, within the student notebook, we also have a default load time. All right. In the requirements page of each student notebook, you see this load time listed here, and normally it's listed as a 0 load time, because what we're doing here, we're allowing you to add additional time on a per student basis to the loading time. So if the default time is not enough for an individual student, you can, in the student notebook, add additional time to what's already being used in the default for that individual student. And whatever stop you assign that student to, the system will add that additional amount of time to the stop load time. The third override, or the third load time, is listed actually on the routed stop itself. All right, so after you've created a route, within each of the routed stops, you have the ability to override the time as well. All right, so right now, you can see for this particular stop, I have one regular rider assigned, so the system is defaulting the load time to 0.3 minutes. And that, again, is coming from my stop load times page in the school district notebook. But if I wanted to override that, I would simply check this box here and then type in the amount of time I wanted, for instance, 1 minute. All right, so those are the three places within the MapNet software that impact the stop load times. Again, that was the district settings, the stop load times page. Then we have the requirements page within the student notebook. Okay, and then lastly, we have the override time in the routed stop notebook. Now, the other factor that influences the route times on your route are via policies. All right, now in the route map window, when you calculate a route, the program uses what are called via policies to calculate the directions for the route and also the times. And specifically, the speed and turn penalties are going to influence the time on the route. Now, I'll tell you, if the times on a route are off, there's a good chance that the directions or the via path on the route is also off. But if your via path is correct, but your travel times are off, one of the things you need to look at is the speed and the turn penalty. All right, speed is the speed with which a bus is permitted to travel on a block. The turn penalty is the amount of time it takes for that bus to make a given turn. A left turn, a right turn, straight, or a U-turn. All right, so based on the path that the system selects for that route, it's using that via time in conjunction with the stop load time to establish the times on a route. Now, in going forward, the recommendation is always to look at your via policies and your district settings and try to get the times correct using those, so that 9 times out of 10 or more often the system will calculate the route and the times correctly. However, there are certain situations or certain occasions when you'll need to edit the times on a route, and that's what I'd like to discuss next. So I've added a route to my route map window, and I'm now going to open the route. All right, now this is a pickup route for one of my elementary schools. There's 2 rules that you have to follow when you're editing times on a route. First of all, on a morning route, you want to start at the bottom, at the arrival, and work your way towards the top, because the route is already arriving at the latest arrival time established in the settings of your activity notebook. So when you're editing the times, you want to work your way from the bottom towards the top and make the times earlier if necessary. And in the afternoon on the delivery route window, you want to do the opposite. You want to start at the top and you want to work your way down towards the bottom. All right, now I'm going to show you 3 different methods for editing the times on a route. The first method is what we call the auto method. On a morning pickup route, if I click on Options, Edit Time Auto, and I edit the time on one of my stops, currently the stop is 8:40, and if I make the time 8:39, when the setting is set to auto, it'll take that 1 minute and flow it back towards the top and update all the times on my stops automatically. So my first stop is currently 8:28, and I've adjusted this stop number 8 by 1 minute. So now all of my times previous are adjusted by 1 minute also. That's the auto method. On the afternoon side, it would be just the opposite. If I edit one of the times here on my window and make it a minute later, again, it'll take that time, that 1 minute, and flow it down towards the bottom. So my last stop is currently 4:32, and if I make it 1 minute later, it's now 4:33. So again, on the editing times, the auto method, you edit the time and it takes that difference and flows it all the way back up towards the top if it's a morning pickup, or all the way down to the bottom if it's an afternoon delivery. You'll also notice that the time is shown in bold. That's to indicate that I've edited the time on the route. The next thing I'd like to show you is under Edit Time, Options Edit Time, and that's the manual mode. All right, now in the manual mode, when you edit the time on a stop, that time difference does not flow through the rest of the route. So if you need to edit one time on a stop, all right, so here's stop number 6. If you need to edit the time on one stop only, you switch to the manual mode, and the system then allows you to edit that one individual time, and when you click OK, that does not flow through the rest of the route. And again, on the afternoon side, if I do the same here, change it by 1 minute, you'll see my last stop is at 4:33. When I switch to the manual mode here, change my stop by 1 minute, you'll see that the times don't change. So that's the manual mode. Now, the last thing I'd like to show is the third method, and that is the force time. All right, in the Create Route window, you have the ability to force the overall time on a route by using this box here called Force Time. It will allow you to edit the overall length of time on the route from first stop to destination. Currently, this route is 27 minutes in length. So if I wanted to force it into 20 minutes, I would check this box, Force Time. I would type in the total time I want for the route, and then I need to decide whether I want to divide that time evenly between the stops, or if I want to split the time in proportion to the distance that those stops are apart. So when I save the route then, when I save the route, the system recalculates the times, and you can see now that my first time is 8:35 and I reach my destination at 8:55, so now I have a 20-minute route. And as long as this box stays checked, if I add additional stops or remove stops or change the sequence of the stops on the route, that route will remain 20 minutes in length, even if I recalculate all vias on route. Now to undo it, I simply uncheck the box and I resave the route. And when I resave the route, I recalculate all. And when I recalculate all, the system again uses the default loading time in my district settings. It uses the VIA time, and it uses the VIA policies on my map to establish the path and the time for each of the stops on the route. All right, now just remember that you have the ability to edit the times, but in the long run, what you want to do, if you're editing the times frequently, you want to step back and you want to look at your district settings and your VIA policies to determine why the times are off. Unfortunately, this is the busy time of the year for all of us, and we don't have time necessarily to edit each and every single route. So hopefully, if you have the proper policies on your route map and the proper settings in your district settings, you'll get the stop times and the routes that you want. All right, well, I'd like to thank everybody for attending our second webinar, and stay tuned for details on our next webinar.